If you're like me, then at some point in the last, say, 10 years, you've probably booted up the old PlayStation 2 or original Xbox, or even any console from 5 years ago or before. You put in a game you remember dearly, only to find a plethora of company logo animations making you feel like Peter Griffin at the movies.
Yeah, that's what you say. I can never figure out when the hell the studio logos end and the actual movie begins. Oh, I bet that's a sea monster. Oh, that's not the movie. Yeah, I think I heard of them. Here we go. Movie! Well, now that seems intentionally misleading. All right, someone's coming to town. Oh, for crying out loud.
But as you watch these logos, you think to yourself, what the hell happened to these companies? I mean, this is ridiculous. I don't recognize any of these. It's amazing how many game companies just don't exist anymore. There are always going to be one-off developers that have their 15 minutes of fame, sure, but even some of the larger known companies like THQ and Neversoft have seemingly vanished, left only as a memory encapsulated in older games. Why is it that companies like Activision, Ubisoft, NetherRealm, and Treyarch are still around, but LucasArts isn't? Well, I'm about to play the best games from a few companies that went under and talk about why they don't exist anymore in the first place. Was it poor management, quality, marketing? Let's see. THQ was big on licensed property. Their games weren't always original, but that wasn't necessarily a bad thing, especially not when you've got the likes of SpongeBob, WWE, UFC, Marvel, and even Pixar on your resume.
When do you get to that point of enough is enough?
Never.
I mean, these games were fantastic. Battle for Bikini Bottom is great. The WWE games were incredible, going all the way back to the N64. So what the hell happened? Well, while the final nail in the coffin is debatable, several unfortunate factors contributed to the downfall. First of all, licensed properties aren't exactly cheap to get. They can be costly and unpredictable, and when a lot of your budget is trying to get the rights to a specific movie or franchise, you better hope the game sells well. Sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. Regardless, THQ was absolutely huge for decades, and the big names associated with the brand made it stand out from the others. I mean, we've all probably played a THQ game at some point, even if we didn't realize it. What we didn't know is that with all the licensing deals they had, they were actually losing money rather than making profit, and even their originals like Saints Row didn't sell as much as expected. As time went on, the quality of the licensed games began to drop. THQ lost more money and they began selling off their licenses. But perhaps the most laughable reason for their failure is the fact that in 2011, they came out with the U-Draw tablet.
New for Wii, the U-Draw game tablet. Turns your TV into a digital art studio.
You guys remember this thing? Yeah, me either. I don't even know what you're talking about right now. The stupid tablet that worked for like 3 games lost THQ $100 million and is widely considered to be the straw that broke the camel's back, if you were. I admit though, I did buy one. I mean, my parents did. You know, I had no money. I grew up poor, and now I'm very humble. But in all fairness, I also bought the Avengers game full price, so the poor decision making runs in the family. The U-Draw tablet was such a flop that it left 1.4 million units unsold, piled up in warehouses somewhere, and sold less than even that. But THQ, being the brave soldier it was, wouldn't quit after this bullet to both legs, arms, and head. No, they went down swinging. They started a fundraiser, and then filed for bankruptcy in 2012. So while the downfall of THQ may have been for the best, it really does suck that we don't get many licensed games anymore. They used to be everywhere, and I miss them. Thank you, THQ. Lucasfilm Games is now known as a video game licensor, but as we know, it's a former game developer. Also, between the years of 1990 and 2021, operated under the name LucasArts. It was a subsidiary of Lucasfilm owned by George Lucas. I know the company because of the Star Wars games, obviously, Lego Star Wars, Battlefront, you name it. Though it wasn't always Star Wars games. There was also Indiana Jones and a handful of original creations. But come on, we all played the complete saga, we knew Ball, we knew Peak, but all the classic LucasArts games came out in like early 2000s. By its shutdown in 2013, they were barely pumping out games. After the year 2010, they straight up stopped developing and were just publishing. I mean, they were working on Star Wars 1313, but that was cancelled. This lack of games heavily contributed to its closure, which by the way, happened because Disney bought Lucasfilm and pretty much restructured the entire operation, shutting down anything that wasn't making consistent revenue, which LucasArts wasn't. Disney was also primarily interested in the Star Wars series, and felt it would be best for business to license out the Star Wars rights to other publishers, rather than keeping an in-house game development company. Plus, LucasArts wasn't finding great success with the later Star Wars titles anyway. The Force Unleashed 2 had mixed reviews, and did anyone even play LEGO Star Wars 3: The Clone Wars? So their upcoming game at the time, 1313, was cancelled. Everyone at the time was pissed, and maybe rightfully so.
Long time, called Star Wars 1313. Maybe you remember it. They showed off a trailer for it. It was gonna be awesome until Kathleen Kennedy had to come along and pull the fucking rug out from underneath us gamers and put it in the ground 6 feet under. I want that game.
The new Battlefront games made by EA had issues in their own right, whether it was lack of content or microtransactions, but I always liked both of them, and Jedi Fallen Order was a great success. That's essentially it. Disney bought Lucasfilm, they canceled a bunch of stuff, the end. You either know Neversoft from Guitar Hero or Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. Unlike THQ or LucasArts, Neversoft did not develop dozens of games. They had 2 main series, did a bit of Call of Duty, and a couple other fairly recognizable games. Pro Skater 1 and 2 and Guitar Hero 3 and World Tour were hugely popular in the mid to late 2010s. Like, I was never a Guitar Hero kid, or a skateboarder for that matter, but even I had those games. However, like most things, the edgy, fiery skateboard era died out. Instantgram and Your Tub was all the rage, and there was a decline in popularity with both franchises. Also, they were just getting way too oversaturated. I mean, who needs a 7th Tony Hawk game or an 8th Guitar Hero? Neversoft struggled to recapture the magic of the early installments, and in 2014 merged with Infinity Ward, effectively ending as an independent studio. Does Guitar Hero even still exist? Last I saw, there was like a PS4 version, but it didn't have the classic colorful buttons. I don't know. You tell me, because I don't want to look it up. I just wanted to mention one thing before moving on. We used to get Darth Maul. Dude, Tony Hawk Pro Skate. Dude, think of all the characters that the Tony Hawk series has got. Darth Maul, Spider-Man, okay? Different celebrities, Shrek, Wolverine. Are you kidding me? We used to get Darth Maul. I hate the way the world works now, because that could never happen today. They remastered Tony Hawk. They had none of them in there, of course. Of course, because you can't. Because the way, like, contracts and licensing and all that crap works today is so different from, like, 20 years ago. And I hate it. I hate it, and it stinks. And this is why everybody's YouTube videos get demonetized, and this is why everybody's TikTok videos get taken down. I hate it. Back in the 80s and 90s, Midway was right up there with Namco and Nintendo. They were all over the arcades with hits like Marble Madness, Mortal Kombat, Miss Pac-Man, and many more. By the mid-2000s, however, Midway began experiencing significant financial difficulties. The company struggled to adapt to the changing video game market, where new consoles and better games were emerging. The rise of home consoles and decline of arcades took a toll on the business, and they struggled with the high costs associated with creating large-scale games. They were no longer able to keep up with the bigger players like EA, Activision, and Sony. I don't mean to interrupt my own video, but I was just going through, like, I'm in the editing process right now. I'm trying to find, like, trailers just for, like, background, like, video footage. Midway Arcade Treasures 3 for the PlayStation 2, IGN makes a trailer. The thumbnail is the IGN logo. 1.6 thousand views. None. Bother putting in a description. While they still had amazing success with the Mortal Kombat series, later entries were total disappointments. Mix that with a few failed projects and poor decision making, and you've got yourself a mountain of debt. By 2004, Midway was posting significant losses, and their reputation in the industry was starting to fade. Warner Bros. Interactive Entertainment bought out Midway's best series, including Mortal Kombat and NBA Jam in 2009, leaving Midway to disintegrate as an independent entity. There are thousands of companies that have gone under or have just been totally abandoned. You'll see it every time you play an older game, and sometimes these companies are actually still around, but you don't see them anymore for whatever reason. Like, I remember Chemco from Eggmania. I thought that company went under, turns out it's just a Japanese company, and I don't really play Japanese games all that much. I know I missed a few big names in this video, so what are some game developers you remember that shut down? Let me know. Good night.